I asked ChatGPT to tell me what Bloodborne actually is, and the AI's answer was that
Bloodborne is a fast-paced, gothic action RPG.
And I was like, is it really? Hi everyone, welcome back, Streamer Mind here, and today I will be showing you how to break Bloodborne without using stamina. Stamina is responsible for every action that your character does that isn't walking, shooting, or using consumables or hunter tools. So we will be cosplaying as an asthmatic redditor with back problems. Before we begin, if you enjoy watching me suffer through these challenges, consider subscribing to the channel. If you don't, I'll personally call Sony to tell them to never release Bloodborne 2, which has been secretly ready for years. That's obviously not true, because I don't have the power to do that, and Sony would never release it anyways, so subscribe so we can cope together. And with all that being said, we can finally begin. After finishing up my character for ultimate risk potential, I chose Noble Origins for no particular reason. I woke up after one of Diddy's freak-off parties with a suspicious back pain on a creepy looking operating table. And already I had to put to the limits the Italian education system when facing our first enemy. I was able to get around the cute puppy by just walking around this operating table. Unfortunately, he was so eager to cuddle with me that he followed me all the way up the stairs, clipped through my body while I was opening the door, and gave me the welcome to Yarnham treatment. Great fucking start.
Oh shit, here we go again.
I woke up in the hunter's dream, picked up the saw cleaver for resale purposes, cause despite being of noble origins, I was more broke than Mike Tyson. I picked up my gun, ready to bring law and order back to Yarnham. This time around, I made it out of the clinic in one piece and started picking up all the trinkets and shinies laying around. I reached the lamp and bought some Molotovs, which are going to be our main source of damage in the early game. I returned casually strolling through Yarnham, where I had the pleasure to meet the locals. Traversing the area without sprinting can be quite the pickle, especially when you encounter choke points like here in the plaza, which left me quite surprised when I was able to get through it without a single scratch. Oh my god, I am the fucking king of this game. I continued my walk until I got to the shortcut and made my way to Eileen for my daily boners. And since I was in the area, I unlocked the elevator that leads to Papa G's arena, making the bridge accessible, meaning I could get these fine lads to get barbecued by a giant fireball, obtaining a somewhat consistent farming spot. I made sure to pick up the blood shards laying around to upgrade my pistol, and once I was stacked on vials, bullets and Molotovs, I was ready to fight our first boss, the Cleric beast, which started slapping me left and right like we were at the Slapping World Championship. I shot it in the face in return until I got a staggered, and I chucked my Molotovs for honestly some disappointing damage. And I know what you're thinking, yes, I could have used the oil urns laying around level, but there is a very limited amount, so I didn't want to use them all, only to get wombo comboed straight into the afterlife. And talking about the afterlife, I was then caught by one of his long reach slaps while trying to recover and died a miserable death. Luckily, I still had enough resources to get back into the fight, with a small difference. I added knives to my arsenal. I opened the fight the same way by shooting the beast's face and taking down his health with my Molotovs. Unfortunately, I did miss one, which isn't a huge deal, but still, be careful as more bombs hit, the least you'll have to tediously chip his health with bullets and butter knives. The trick was to walk from one side to the other of the bridge, and I was doing really well actually. But then I missed another shot with the Molotovs and I got caught by his attacks, and fortunately I survived, but at this point I was down to my last Molotov. And this is when the throwing knives came in clutch, dealing pretty decent damage when compared to the pistol shots. So wait, here in Yarnham knives are actually stronger than guns? Then it really is the UK after all. Getting past him, as you can probably tell, was the toughest thing to pull off. I started taking hits, but I strafed underneath his crotch to get past him and went back at launching my knives. He, of course, had to jump on me one last time before I was finally able to take him out with a single knife left. After using the bridge farm method to replenish my resources, I made my way to Father Guacamole. And the idea here is simple: parry his attacks and throw fireballs. The issue here is when he gets to his second phase, as his heavy attacks are able to knock you on the ground, which is really bad. Since we can't quickly get up from the ground, he will start chaining his attacks, actively making it impossible to do anything other than cry watching your character being turned into blue waffles. Meaning, missing a single parry could lead to a pretty horrible death. Luckily, he has long wind-up attacks which are pretty well telegraphed, both in his first and second phase. I couldn't find a way to consistently dodge his pistol shots though, so I just faced tanked them. When he enters his second phase, he gets way easier to parry and also becomes very weak to fire. I missed one of my parries though, and I thought I was done for, but the stairs did something weird to the hitboxes and I was able to recover. And at this point, I wrapped up the fight in a neat little bow. With the two early bosses taken care of, I ran around the area of the cathedral ward to get all of the useful materials, including the best items in the game, the rickety shield, before being turned into dog food again and again, until I finally opened up the path to Old Yarnham, where I again walked around the area to get all the goodies I could put my dirty hands on. I ate some lead for dinner, courtesy of our good old friend Jura. I got a gem for my gun, opened up the shortcut, and made my way to the beautiful sweetest babe, aka BSB. Once again, parrying will be the key for this fight. Things were going smooth sailing in first phase. When she entered her second phase, however, her attacks start dealing poison, so make sure to equip some antidotes before starting the fight. A lot of her attacks can be avoided without rolling nor dodging, so positioning was a big factor for the success of the fight. She also has some attacks which are rather difficult to read and react to, such as her grab attack. The Molotovs were dealing pretty decent damage, accompanied by the occasional throwing knife thrown in the mix. In third phase, she becomes way more aggressive and she'll poison you with the sheer power of her stinky breath. But I powered through the stench and finished her off anyways. Killing BSB means we have now access to the Chalice dungeons, in particular the Cum dungeon, which we can use to level up and to buy crucial materials such as bullets, vials, and occasional weapons. And yes, I will be abusing the living shit out of this exploit because guess what? You don't need stamina to access the pay-to-win mechanics of this game. Just pull out mommy's credit card and give Sony those sweet dollars. I also made sure to pick up the Radiant Sword Hunter badge for infinite bone marrow ashes before visiting Clifford the big white dog. Opening up the fight with a spectacular stagger. My repeating pistol +3 paired with the bone marrow ashes were dealing decent damage. Combined with the Molotovs and oil urns, I had a consistent damage output. A lot of her attacks can knock you over, but she has pretty long recovering times, meaning we had all the time in the world to get back on our feet. I unloaded all of my pistol shots at her, occasionally breaking limbs and whatnot. And I then finished her off with my Molotovs, making this the easiest fight so far. Speaking of which, or should I say witches, I made my way to Hemwick, where traversing the area was more stressing than losing my grandparents on my birthday. I got gangbanged repeatedly before making it to the boss, where I had zero issue fighting the two witches. As expected, I should also say. The only thing that did happen is that I wasn't able to eliminate the second witch on time, meaning the first one came back to life because of reasons, I guess, extending the fight a little longer, but once I found her, I just unloaded my clip on her until she left this world forever. And I obtained the Rune Hunter tool, which allows us to extend our bullets and vial counts. Now that we have access to the Forbidden Wood, I made my way through enemies, dogs and poison swamps. Made it to the clinic shortcut and picked up the Pain Hurt summons, and I traveled to Soviet Russia, and after surviving the sound of 1,000 screaming women, I got the most broken item in this game, the Executioner's Glove. Before we jump on to the next boss, let's quickly wrap up a few things. So, I was invited by Jura to check out his best impression of Liam Payne. Spoiler alert, it was perfect. In return, I got his badge. Also, picked up some fancy designer fabrics because, you know, fashion is important even in a blood-soaked world like this one. And then I played a little bit of Vietnam Simulator, which was definitely... Then I tested out my new weapon on some locals and I reached the shortcut. Took a stroll through the woods to grab all the loot I could find, quin shards, random trinkets, you name it. It was honestly a blast dodging these enemies. I was just too slow for them to catch up. Now, the shadows, they were a different story. They were definitely going to be a pain at our current level, so time to break this game apart a little more. First things first, I leveled up my arcane because hunter tools scale with it, obviously. And just for the record, no innocent man were harmed in the making of this video. I mean, I didn't kill anyone just to carry more bullets. Definitely wasn't me, officer. It was time to cast some light on the shadows of Yarnham finally, and well, that turned out to be a bit tougher than I thought. So here's the plan. I mostly focused on the katana guy first. He's the most aggressive. I was using my pistol to get those parries in, but avoiding 3 guys chasing me while barely being able to dodge felt like sticking broken glass into my eyelid. Not fun. Eventually the trio transformed, and that's when I switched to the gloves. The katana guy gets long range attacks in this form, so I had to adapt. Now, I'll admit, I completely mismanaged my bullets during this fight. That definitely didn't help with the end result, as you can imagine. However, once the katana guy was taken care of, it was time to deal with the fireball throwing Karen in the back. The giant tombstone in the middle of the arena, crucial for splitting up the pair and giving me some breathing room. The great thing about the gloves? Their slow speed. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but here's the trick. Most humanoid enemies react and dodge the moment the attack starts, getting hit by the projectiles which reach them a few hundred years later, which completely breaks these type of encounters. Now, while the damage wasn't awful, it wasn't exactly great either. Eventually, I got rid of the pyromancer and I could finally focus on the real nightmare of this fight, this snake summoning piece of shit. At this point, I only had 5 bullets left. Yeah, that's not enough to send him into a loop, unfortunately, and of course, I missed one of my precious enhanced shots. Things were looking pretty grim. He started summoning his snake buddies, and I managed to avoid them the first time around, but then, of course, I forgot that he can defy the laws of physics, and after that bullshit, he summoned more snakes, making everything way worse. I was out of bone marrow ashes, bullets, and blood vials. So at this point, I just prayed to the great ones and used the gloves to finish off the fight. Desperation at its finest, folks. There is nothing else to do but to praise the come. So I was going to need some upgrades for my gun now. I got swept off my feet and taken straight into the DLC. And let's just say it was lovely dealing with the creatures living there. First, I survived the beaches of Normandy. Yeah, and honestly, Grandpa didn't make it justice when he was telling me about it. Got shot during a gun rally, you know, the usual day in Yarnham. But after some blood, sweat and tears, I finally made it to the shortcut. Then things took a more wholesome turn. I played fetch with the neighbor's dogs before using all of my IQ points to get past this hunter blocking my way to the next area. And I'm honestly still amazed to this day that I got through him on my first try. After gathering the blood chunks in the area, because of course I needed those, I made my way back to Bergenworth to continue our journey through the base game. Picked up the key and then went for a swim. So the strategy for rum, pretty simple. Just get close to the giant potato and unload the gloves. Easy enough. Now things took a weird turn when I faced off against Rom. I had the riggedy shield equipped, just for trolling of course, and I tried blocking Rom's meteorites. And to my complete shock, I realized I wasn't using any stamina. Was this a glitch? Does anyone know what happened here? Maybe I just discovered a way to make this totally useless item actually useful. Either way, I closed the gap again, got up close to Rom, and finished her off without much trouble. Definitely one of the easiest bosses I've encountered so far. Once I arrived in Yharnam, I walked around like I owned the place, just picking up all the blood chunks I could find. Of course, I got nuked several times in the process because this area is packed with enemies and bullshit. My daily stroll was anything but peaceful. I made sure to grab the key for the upper cathedral ward, and then I paid a visit to Carl, and let's just say he got absolutely humiliated. It was kinda satisfying, because I used to hate this boss in my early days of playing this game. I mean, you can't understand shit when looking at him. Look at him, Miyazaki, look at him! Tell me what the fuck is going on? Continuing my walk through town, I picked up the tiny nitrous for the next boss, and because I'm a nerd, I raised my arcane like a true dweeb. Made it to the upper cathedral ward, grabbed the key to the garden, and then smoked the smurfs to get my hands on Call Beyond, which is useful against bigger targets. I gave the screaming horse a try then, but let's just say I was completely unprepared for the nightmare of a fight that awaited me, so I decided to put the tiny nitrous to the test against a giant pile of corpses. It looks sort of like a train in India, and here is what happened, guys. Like a lot of people during this time, I returned to school, picked up the Augur of Ebrietas, and then fucked off to the Nightmare Frontier. And that's where I had a lovely encounter with two sweaty Dark Souls 3 PvPers, you know the type. I took a nice, relaxing walk through the poison swamps, filled with charming creatures I should say, and then I absolutely destroyed Amy. Next, I traveled to the Nightmare of Mensis, which I thought was going to be a nightmare to traverse, thanks to the frenzy spears at the beginning. To my surprise though, I got through most of the area without much of a problem. Even the elevator, which is known to be a choke point, I managed to avoid your sister's attack and made it through in one piece without a problem. Now Micolash is next on our list. And as I said before, the gloves just smelled humanoid enemies. If it wasn't for the goddamn mannequins, this would have been an easy first try. I picked up my dignity and tried again, and let me tell you, just watch how broken these fights become. For second phase, I cheesed his ass from the balcony as you would expect, earning myself a sweet and easy victory. See? I told you, we're literally breaking this game without even trying to use stamina. Alright, now we can finally move on to the end of the game. So I walked past some shadows, and then walked past some more shadows, and finally I arrived at the boss, without opening the shortcut. I watched the cool cutscene, got all hyped up, and then died a miserable death. Classic. But hey, we don't give up that easily, right? So I did it all over again. This time I reminded myself to not be stupid and actually get to the elevator. Then I started unloading all of my sheer power on Murgo. Honestly, there's not much to say here. I mean, I barely had to do anything. It was pretty much a one-sided fight. Alright, now we're back in the DLC, and Ludwig couldn't wait any longer to become the worst boss of the entire run. Well, the worst boss so far. It took me a while to find a decent strategy for this guy because honestly, he's just annoying. So first things first, I maxed out my arcane, and trust me when I say there are 3 important rules for this fight. 1. Use your trusty gloves. 2. Stay on his left. And 3. Most importantly, his second phase is just ass. Now let's talk about movement and positioning. As I mentioned, your best bet is to stay on his left side. You want to be at a mid-range distance from him and try to bait this attack, as it's the easiest to avoid. I had to upgrade my vitality quite a bit so I could survive his hardest hitting attacks. For his charge attack, where he cosplays as a truck though, instead of staying on his left, walk to the right. His hitboxes are smaller on that side. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it work perfectly because, well, distance is a big factor to avoid it. The closer the easier, remember. But if you use the gloves properly, you can mostly ignore everything I just said. Don't get me wrong, you'll still need to dodge some attacks and possibly tank a few, but if you shoot twice at a time with the gloves, you'll not only deal massive damage, but also stagger him consistently almost every time. So phase 1, pretty easy after all. His second phase, however, total RNG chaos. All I can say is, stay close, but not too close. If you get knocked to the ground, well, just say goodbye and try again. But if you can survive his anime bullshit attack, victory will be yours. And hey, managing bullets is key here, so make sure to use blood bullets every chance you get. In the end, the fight looked a little something like this.
Go! Go!
Alright, it's time to face the worst area of this Forsaken run, and it's the worst only because of this one rule. I had to eliminate every single enemy in sight using Molotovs, the gloves, and even raw bullets. I mean, I actually had to play the game. Can you believe that?
Can you believe that?
Shocking stuff, honestly. But after surviving that hellhole, I started to worry about this crazy lad over here. I activated my spider senses and moved past all of his insane attacks like a pro. Anyways, I moved up the staircase, and that's when I said hello to my brothers and sisters. I, the king of failures, have returned. The gloves were extremely effective here, especially when these guys summoned their meteorites. They just stood there like idiots, trying to look threatening, while I was casually turning them into a puddle of goo. One thing I will say is these guys made me chew through bullets faster than your average American does in a day. Like, I nearly ran out of everything. Anyways, the best boss in the DLC went down easily, and we could now move on. And here we go again. Back at the point where I have to suppress my feelings for a fictional character made out of pixels, just so I can continue this cursed journey through Bloodborne. Oh Maria, I am sorry for this sheer humiliation. I can't believe though Miyazaki hasn't released your feet pics yet. That's the real curse in Yharnam. I was dying in laughter hearing her constantly grunting when getting hit by my menstrual cycle. After I found a giant cookie laying on the ground, I practiced my best impression of the letter A before opening the secret passage like I was Indiana Jones. I arrived in Florida, gave some money to a homeless guy who enjoys having extended conversations with himself, and one thing I forgot to mention, mainly because I lost the footage of me acquiring it, is that I now had the Cosmic Eye, which shoots a pretty fast projectile that can be very useful in mid to long range combat. This fine gentleman gave me a hug so hard that I died from the sheer power of love. Aww. Ain't he cute? Anyways, after that small incident, I continued my stroll on this beautiful seaside, eventually going for a hike. The locals here were very friendly. I somehow, someway survived a direct attack from a shark, and you know well that will impress the ladies in Yarnham. And I then used my human intellect to cheese him through the door. After that, I had a wonderful time fishing, and finally opened up the shortcut. Then I had to deliver a baby. A beautiful, healthy looking baby, I should add. My idea for this fight was to use the Cosmic Eye and keep a relevant safe distance from Cos. And my first attempt was not going half bad. Cos has these moments in between attacks where he just walks like a senile grandpa lost in his own neighborhood. Sometimes though, he could dodge my shots like he had the goddamn Sharingan. Things, however, were still going pretty well. When second phase began, however, that's when the cracks started to show. The first problem is how much he rushes you in this phase. He becomes a fucking maniac, and finding openings was resulting to be harder and harder. I powered through nonetheless, but another problem quickly made its appearance. I was running out of ammo and heals fast. This distracted me to the point of me losing sight of his position and paying the ultimate price. This was the last time Cos played nice, by the way. So after some more attempts, I decided that the Cosmic Eye was just not good enough for this boss. And something I quickly learned is if you get knocked over, there's a good chance you won't stand up again. I tried everything, but in the end the gloves were the best option. But second phase, however, still seemed to be inaccessible. Hi guys, sorry for the interruption, but unfortunately I realized I forgot to record my successful attempt against Cos. And I know, show the clip or it never happened, right? However, I will show you what I did in order to get past Cos second phase, getting the footage from one of my older videos, you know, one of those that nobody watched. So I used the gloves for this fight in the end because they stagger, they have range, and do decent damage despite the Orphan's resistance to arcane. By staying far away, it was easy to mostly dodge his attacks. An important thing I learned is that when hit, especially from this attack, it's better to never be walking towards him before that happens, as by walking away will mean there is enough distance between you and the placenta smashing child. Therefore, he will nearly always follow up with a jump attack, which you can avoid by just simply walking towards him right after getting up. And you'll always have enough time to get back up on your feet, trust me. When he starts doing his rodeo crazy cowgirl move, is a good chance to get some hits in. When he was near 50% health, just before he transitions, I lured him toward these rocks. Got a few more shots at him in order to send him into second phase, and if you're lucky enough, this should happen. I'm telling you, it's pretty RNG based, but it works better when he is in between two different terrains, like the rocks and the water here. Next up, we got a reskinned boss, because FromSoft is so creative. And this was easier than the normal Cleric beast. I just spammed the Call Beyond over and over until he collapsed on the ground and started throwing a fit like a spoiled brat who couldn't get his way, surviving any way I could, and spammed the spell. With the DLC over, there was no more reason to indulge in this forsaken dream any longer. So I had a chat with a paraplegic old man, and in order to get him to walk again, I played some Taylor Swift, and rest assured he definitely got up to turn that shit off and turn me off in the process. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't survive the smell of my farts and ended up dying an embarrassing death. Nobody can say anything bad about Taylor Swift in front of me. You understand, you old man? Alright guys, finally this is over, but unfortunately that means we have to say goodbye. In the end, this run was pretty easy if you couldn't really tell, proving that you can indeed break Bloodborne without using stamina. If you have any suggestions on how I could have made it even easier, please don't be shy and tell me down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. Alright guys, this is all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.